Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing a brake change on a 2017 Nissan Juke. So I have everything that you're going to need laid out here. Get some jack stands, your jack, some brake cleaner, something to use as a pry bar. We got our sockets, our ratchet, a breaker bar just in case. I don't know if these things are going to give me a problem or not. A couple of C-clamps, some gloves, and then over here we got these parts from carparts.com. We gave them a try. They were pretty cheap for an entire set. So we ordered these on Monday, and we weren't supposed to receive them until the following Monday, but they got here lightning fast and they were here by Thursday, so we were able to do the swap out this weekend. So let's go ahead and get started here. This is the front rotor, and you can tell because it's not quite as deep, okay? Then we've got the rear rotors, which are, you can tell, a little bit deeper here. Okay, that's because it has the drum on the inside. And then you have the pads for both the rear and the front. Okay, and then it also came with a couple little packets of the component lubricant, so you don't have to go out and buy some. Let's go ahead and get this wheel off and start on the passenger side front. So the first thing we're going to want to do is loosen up these lug nuts before we get it up in the air. Once you get them loosened up, just a little, not too much, we're going to go ahead and use the jack. Some of these newer cars, they have a jack that's specifically for the car. This one has one, and it has little notches underneath here. This is the notch that you're going to use for putting the jack. So this will go right up in here like this. Then you're going to want to go ahead and put a jack stand in there and then back it off just a little bit. Make sure that your jack stand is going to carry the weight and keep your wheel off the ground at the same time. We're going to keep a little tension on that, but we want that jack stand in there to protect us from the car falling. So now we're going to go ahead and take the lug nuts off. For safekeeping, I like to keep the lug nuts inside the wheel. We're just going to set that off to the side. Now you can see this is pretty rusted out. The car was sitting for a couple of months. Doesn't look like she's ever had any brake work done. So we're going to go ahead and take the caliper off first, and we should use a 14mm socket for this one. That's correct. So we're going to remove the caliper first, and on the back side of the caliper there's two bolts that are 14mm, one on the top and one down here on the bottom. Now we're going to want to go ahead and shimmy this off and kind of hang it over here for safekeeping. Make sure that you don't put a kink in this hose when you're putting it off to the side. Now we can use one of our little pry bars. Now that we have the pads off, we're going to go ahead and take the rest of this caliper off. I know on the website it said that it was going to be a 14 and a 17. Ours is a 14 and a 19. There we go. Okay, got that one broke loose. All right. Now that we have them broke loose, we can go ahead and use our ratchet again. One thing I forgot to mention that you might want to have handy is some kind of hammer. I've got a rubber mallet, so if these things get locked up on you, You can come around here and bang on it a little bit. And then it'll come off. So this is what the old one looks like. Not very good shape. So we're gonna set that off to the side. Grab our new one. While I have everything off, I like to go ahead and clean things up a bit. I'll use some of the brake cleaner to just kind of blow this off a little. It's very rare that we take these off, so this is a good opportunity to do a little house cleaning in here. If you wanted to get really technical about it, you could get a wire brush in here and clean it off. I'm not too terribly worried about it. Just want to get some of this big stuff off of here. I like to go ahead and spray the new rotors. So we're going to go ahead and replace the caliper housing. Okay, I want to get those nice and snug. Good. Now we're going to go ahead and put our new brackets on here. Just kind of snap in place. Okay. There we go. Before we squeeze the caliper, we're going to go ahead and take the cap off of the brake fluid. So next, you're going to use your C-clamp or channel locks or whatever you want to use. We're going to pull this back. Now you can see we have it nice pulled back. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up just a little bit while I have it off. Make sure you don't damage the seal right here. But check the seal, make sure that it's not damaged already. If it is, you may need to be thinking about replacing the caliper as well. Or if you can't get the caliper to retract like that, you might think about replacing the caliper as well. Okay, I got that scraped off a little bit. Okay. Now you're just going to place the caliper back into position. Over your new brake pads. And replace your hardware. You can also use the lubricant that came with it for your hardware. I didn't use it on the first bolts, but I think I'll go ahead and use it on these. Just going to put a little bit of that lubricant on there. Do the same thing to the other bolts. And let's put our 14mm socket back on. Make sure they're nice and snug. Good. So we have the passenger side done now. We're going to go ahead and put the tire back on. Whenever you're putting the lug nuts back on, always put them back on in a star pattern. I usually start at the top, one, then drop down here, then we're going to go up here, back over here, and then this one will be the last one. And that's how you want to tighten it up as well. So right now, what I'm going to do is put the lug nuts on till they're snug, and then I'm going to drop down the jack a bit just to where the tire's touching, and that's when I'm going to snug them up. Now that I have them just a little bit snug, we can go ahead and pull out our jack stands, and we can let the car down just a little bit. I prefer to use a torque wrench when doing this. Unfortunately, I don't have my torque wrench with me, so I'm just going to make sure that these are snug, but not overly tight. Just go around a couple of times and double check. Make sure you're not getting any more rotation. And then you're good to go. We're going to go ahead and drop the jack down and jump over to the other side. Okay, just like we did on the last side, we're going to go ahead and loosen those lug nuts up first. This is a brake pad that is completely worn down to the metal. There is no pad left. This is metal. See? A new pad has this. Hear the difference? That's pad. This is metal. So when your pads get down to this, you know it's time for a change. Because the thickness of the rotor has to be a certain thickness. I don't have the thickness gauge, but when you run metal against metal, you're shaving the rotor down, making this thickness smaller, making your brakes less effective. So by putting the new rotors on, this part here is going to be thicker, and then the new pads will be right up against it. So when you apply the brakes, the maximum amount of pressure will be applied. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the lubricant on the large bolts. And we're going to put the caliper housing back in place. And we'll put our new pad brackets in. Just snap them into place on both top and bottom. Let's grab our caliper and our C-clamp. Okay, now that it's all the way pushed back in there, I'm going to go ahead and clean it up just a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and put the caliper back in place. Now, usually I would not put the lug nut in here before putting a few turns on it with my fingers. Unfortunately, with these rims, this is too deep for me to get my fingers in there to do it. If you feel any resistance as you're turning the lug nut to tighten it up, do not keep going. Back it out, because it is probably cross-threaded. If it tightens up nice and smooth, you can keep going. But I do not make it a habit to put this in a tool, to put any nut in a tool to start it out. Always start out threading a nut with your fingers to keep from cross-threading. All right, let's let the car down a little bit and tighten up our lugs. So I think I'm done for the day. I did the front brakes, and I think we'll do the back brakes tomorrow. We're gonna be running out of daylight here in a few, and I'm getting a little hungry. So we'll see you in the morning. Hey guys, I wish I could say good morning, but it's the weekend and I didn't want to get out of bed. So good afternoon, and let's go ahead and continue on with our brake replacement on the 2017 Nissan Juke. We're going to go ahead and do the rear driver side now. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start out with our 14 millimeter, and we're going to remove the caliper. Set it up here somewhere safe and out of the way. Now we can remove the brake pads, and we can take the old clips off, so we have new ones to replace. Okay, so the rear brakes are going to be a 17 millimeter to remove the housing, and go ahead and remove that. Just like I did in the front, just going to scrape off the parts a little bit to get some of the big debris off, and then we'll spray these off with the brake cleaner before we put them back on. Now this one does have like a little rubber grommet on it, and my replacements did not come with one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of use the pry bar on the outside here and squeeze it out just like that, and then I'm going to replace this and put it on the new rotor. So after you remove the rubber grommet, just bang around the sides a little bit, and it should come right off. Now that we have the drum off, we're going to go ahead and clean up the inside before we put on the replacement. Now let's replace the grommet and slide the new one on there. All right, so now that we have that cleaned off, we're going to put a little lubricant on our bolts, and we're going to put this back in place. So today we're gonna put this thing together a little bit differently. I'm gonna go ahead and put the brake pads on here first. And now we're gonna replace our bolts. Make sure that's snug. Now I just wanna clean up my caliper just a little bit, get any of the big debris off. Now you wanna make sure that the cap for your brake fluid is off, because we're gonna go ahead and press this back so we can go ahead and slide it back over the brake pads. So now we're gonna take our C-clamp and we're gonna put that over. The back ones are a little bit tricky because the back part of the caliper is kind of rounded. So you just kind of have to hold it in place, tighten it up a little. If it slides off, then just back it off and start over again. But when you get done, it should be packed back in there just like this. Now we're gonna flip it back over and we're gonna slide it over our brake pads. Now let's lubricate our bolts and replace them. Make sure that the rubber housing for these bolts is in place properly, and go ahead and tighten them up. And when you're done tightening up the bolts, just make sure that this little rubber housing fits over the entire length of the bolt. Do not damage the rubber. Be very gentle. Perfect. Nice and tight. Now let's go ahead and put the wheel back on. Okay, we're done with the driver's side rear. Let's go ahead and jump over to the passenger side rear. Okay guys, let's go ahead and finish this thing up. Last one. Now let's remove the caliper and set it over here for safekeeping. Grab our 17mm. Okay, now we can remove our brake pads and the brackets. Just a tip, a lot of the brake pads will come with multiple size clips. Make sure that you choose the one that's right for your vehicle. Okay, let's go ahead and put the wheel back on. Okay, the last step is gonna be going back up there and making sure that your fluid is all topped off with dot 3, and put the cap back on, pump the brakes a couple of times, and head out. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please hit the like and subscribe button down at the bottom, and we'll catch you next time. And I don't know about you, but having my tongue out in one direction or another kind of helps me concentrate.